Good morning and welcome to Saturday Morning Breakfast, the program of the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton. Today's show is being recorded by Stowe TV for later rebroadcast on their YouTube channel. Today we have Paul Reisberg will be talking about electrifying your life, but first I want to tell you about next month's speaker. Henry Patterson, who's been in the restaurant business for most of his life. He went over to Poland in March and he worked for the World Central Kitchen, which is a pretty well-known organization, and he'll be talking about that situation, his experiences there. So today, before Paul speaks, I've got a question of the day, and as you might expect, it relates to electricity. And I want to hear your thoughts on three items: induction stoves, heat pumps, and electric vehicles, whether you have them or you're considering, or where you are with those things. And I'll start, and Paul can go last. We got an induction stove a few months ago, and it didn't replace a gas stove, so it was a trade from electric to electric. But we really enjoy the induction stove. It boils water very quickly and cools down afterwards, and it's very adjustable, like gas is too. We live in a 1950s ranch house without air conditioning. Like Paul, our new boiler was 7 or 8 years old, but still we're going to consider getting a heat pump, most for air conditioning, but also as hopefully a primary heat source. And then lastly, for electric cars, we don't have any right now. We're looking to replace our Subaru with some kind of a hybrid. And I drive a pickup truck. I'm retired now, so I don't drive it as much as I used to, but looking for an all-electric vehicle just to run around town. So, Rick, gentlemen, what's your views on heat pumps, electric cars, and induction stoves?
I don't know anything about induction stoves. We don't have one. We have a gas stove. The stove part of it doesn't work anymore, but we use the burners. But realize that's not the way to help save the planet. We don't have any heat pumps. We have the window air conditioners in our 1950s Cape. And we don't have an electric car, but perhaps the next one we get might be.
Okay. John? Oh, okay, we got two Johns. Okay, Jonathan Daisy, why don't you go first?
All right. Well, my wife has a hybrid Prius and has had 3 of them actually, 2 got hit. But anyway, I've never bought a new car, and I'm looking forward to the days when electric cars become so common that people do what they do with regular cars and always want to trade up to the latest and get one at a decent price for myself, because I think they are great. We're looking into a heat pump for our air conditioning because we have a lot of casement windows, and a regular window air conditioner doesn't work anyway. And if we can get something more efficient, great. I like the idea of the induction stove. I might start out with a plate at some point.
Yeah.
Try it out. We have a gas stove, but we don't use it that much. So that's where I stand.
Okay. John Kendrick?
All right. Well, I don't know anything about induction stoves. We have an electric stove. I'll be interested in learning more. Heat pump, I'll tell you what, when my oil heating bill went from a maximum of about $360 to $1,020, I've started seriously thinking, I got to do something else. So heat pump would be of interest to me. I'd like to learn more. And then definitely interested in an electric car. By the way, I will point out just one thing that I was very surprised about. This is a little aside, but recently the S&P 500 folks with their ESG, environmental, social, and governance index, kept Exxon on it and took Tesla off. But that was more because of the way they treat their employees and so forth. But anyway, interesting. But
And
regardless, I'm
they
very
added
interested in-
Chevron too,
Yeah, crazy. But anyway,
And-
I'm very interested.
and Marathon.
Yeah. So an electric car is definitely in our future, and I'd like to learn more.
Okay, good. Rick and Sharon?
Well, we have had a hybrid for what, 5 years?
Yeah, it's Chevy Volt, which they don't make anymore. That would be a great car to look for, Jonathan, when you're looking for a resale, because they sold a bunch of them about 10 years ago and then stopped making them. And it's a fabulous car. The battery runs for about 60 miles on a full charge, which is 90% of our travel. So 90% of our travel is on is an EV.
Yeah.
With a gas backup then.
So we have, as you know, we have heat pumps throughout the house and rely mostly on heat pumps for heating and cooling. We have not taken out our oil, but one of the lovely things that happened was when we installed our heat pumps, we're using them. They started to make oil delivery, and there was like $2 or $3 gas. And then
We haven't had to fill, we've had the heat pumps running through, 2 heating seasons now. And we've used 1/3 of a tank of heating oil tops.
Yeah. And then we have solar panels on the roof. And unfortunately, they're not working right now because we had a guy come in and there's an inverter problem. So, but normally they have, and we were on SREX, so we got money once a month. And we're looking into both an all-electric car and an induction stove, based on the fabulous information that we got from Dave K.
And we just bought an electric lawnmower.
Right, yeah, good. Dave K? Are you there? Yeah.
Yeah, hi. We have a Prius, 2013 Prius, which we're looking at maybe getting another year out of and then switching to all electric. We have a induction range top with of course, the oven is never induction. The oven part is either electric or electric with convection. And so we have electric with convection oven with an induction range top. The induction range top is very fast. We used to have a conventional electric, and this one is very close to being as fast as gas. We've got a geothermal pump that we put in 2009, and we've only had one service on that. It's a 2-well system, 2 300-foot wells. A nice thing about that is this time of year, well, this particular weekend, the air conditioning is very inexpensive because we're pumping heat down into 55-degree environment rather than pumping heat out into an 85-degree environment. But it does very well. We have a Prius C in Maui, which would have been a great buy if it weren't for the fact that the batteries don't like to sit uncharged, the high voltage battery, the traction battery. And we didn't know that, and perforce had to leave it for a year during the pandemic. And it was working fine until we loaned it out to Joe Tebow and his fiance, at which point the battery immediately died, costing us $4,600 worth of battery replacement. So that's going to have to get replaced with a gas car, because we don't have a good alternative. Electric car would have the same problem, I believe. And that's our story, and I'm sticking to it.
Great.
Actually, if you have an all electric car, you can leave it plugged in for a long period and it'll avoid that
Unfortunately,
issue.
unfortunately, not an option for us because in the
Okay.
condo, the parking space doesn't have electricity.
Okay.
So Bill Froberg, I don't know if you caught the question of the day, but what's your opinion or what's your use of induction stoves, heat pumps, and electric cars?
Well, we have a Prius that's about 10 years old. And then I just have a conventional gas RAV4. I'm pretty sure our next car will be electric, but we're just not in a position in the near future to be placing what we have. We moved into this condo 3 years ago, so we were kind of subject to whatever they have here and whatever conditions they might put on changes we might propose. But so we have conventional oil heat and electric air conditioning. I think the setup of the condo would be a pretty easy switch to put in heat pumps. So when the time comes, it will be an interesting conversation to have with the condo association to see if that will be an acceptable improvement. And the stove, I guess I'm not really sure what an induction stove is. We just have a conventional electric stove, but we barely use it. We typically just use the little countertop convection oven. So that's kind of where we're at.
So for definition purpose, Dave K, do you want to do a little concise definition of induction stovetop?
Sure. I think part of the problem is the terminology that's out there in the general public is vague and fuzzy. You've got ovens, you've got stoves, you've got range tops, you've got inserts, you've got all kinds of stuff. But anything that's flat and heats up a pan, you can call that a range top. That's what we do. And induction basically works by a magnetic coil underneath the surface of basically a glass top range. And it does not heat the pan by transmitting heat through the glass, but by transmitting magnetic field through the glass and causing a current to flow and magnetic domains to dance and jiggle in ferric pans and pots. So basically the test for a pan or a pot that will work on an induction range top is whether or not a magnet will stick to it. So your cast iron pans will work. Some of your existing pans will work. The ones that are expressly designed for induction range tops tend to be on the hot side, on the heavy side, just in order to give you a little bit of thermal inertia and even heating, but you can use lighter weight ones. A convection oven is basically a conventional electric oven with a fan in it. And the fan reduces stratification within the oven so that the heat is consistent throughout. And the only problem we found with it is it seems to take forever to come up to temperature. So while the cooking time is considerably faster for anything that's in an oven, like a bread or casserole or anything like that, but the time to come up to temperature is surprisingly long.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've noticed with our convection oven, our new one, that I'll set the temperature at 400, say, and then automatically the oven only goes to 350 or something, as if maybe that's the efficiency. You only need 350 with a convection oven.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that's correct. It gives you like the same performance as if it had a higher temperature.
Okay, great. Other than Rick and Sharon, who else has solar panels on their roof?
Yeah, I do.
So just Paul and Rick and Sharon. Okay. All right, Paul, floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I have electric cars and I've had them starting. I went from a Prius, was my first start, but 9 years ago I got a Leaf, and then later on got a Tesla to add to that. I have tried an induction stovetop, and I'm going to get a plate. I'll be using that because again, my oven isn't, my present one is not that old. So when I replace it, I'll go full induction. And the other part is yeah, heat pump. So I'll be spending this summer investigating, and probably next year I'll get the heat pump put in, is my plan there. Well, it's encouraging that everybody's moved somewhat in this electrification direction, and you probably all noticed that it is happening. Electric cars are happening. All these things are happening. It's really just a question of how fast. And I guess that's what I see is part of the purpose of this talk, is just to try to make it happen a little faster by giving encouragement and information. But yeah, let me just share my screen for a moment, and I'll show a few things, and then we can just chat in general. Host disabled participant screen sharing, it says.
What?
Yes.
Let me look at this again.
Anyway, so I can keep talking while I'm doing it. Yeah, so I gave the title Bye Bye Gas, because that's part A, just getting rid of gas. And then I said, electrify your life. And I meant that in a double way, that get everything electric, but also it's just, I've found it's just, electric things are just more fun. Whether it's a induction stove, it's just more fun. Whether it's an electric car, whether it's an electric bike. I guess I left that out in my electric vehicles. I want to talk about my electric bike. Good morning, Steve.
Yes, morning, Steve. I made you a co-host, Paul.
Okay, I'll give it another try. Okay, here we are. Okay, are we good?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, yeah. So bye-bye gas and electrify your life. And what, like I said, really the big motivation, I think, for all of us is climate. And I just wanted to spend one moment on it. And the problem is, I mean, we're all aware of the urgency, but it just overwhelms us. And you can't just, we're not capable of going through life with the urgency that's required. And my thinking is that you just keep it in the back of your mind. And at times when you're making decisions, so you're voting, you're making a big purchase, you recall that urgency and then you use it to inform the decisions. And I just wanted to get us in that context. And this is just looking at last summer. So today it's supposed to be 95 and then tomorrow 95. But a year ago in British Columbia, they hit 121 degrees. I mean, this is Canada. And the town of Lytton is where they hit that record. And the next day, the town disappeared in a fire. This is an actual picture of it. There was a heat wave through the Northwest, killed over 1,000 people. That same month, some villages got wiped out in Germany through floods, killed several hundreds of people. I don't know if you recall, New York got hit by a hurricane, went through Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. The Carolinas got strong again in the Atlantic, then hit New York, flooded New York. Dozens of people died in New York. There were fires as usual in the West, Greece, Turkey. This is a satellite image of the smoke. And if you recall last summer, you could smell the smoke. You could see the smoke that came from the West. I mean, it's been a very busy year. So I had forgotten most of these things. So I need to remind myself. Last summer, they found the first evidence that the Gulf Stream is collapsing. There's the cold blob had formed and it started breaking up. Last summer, they've calculated 14% of the world's coral has lost. Half of the Great Barrier Reef has been bleached. The New England Journal of Medicine is calling for emergency action. There's a Yale report in its title that says it all, avoiding a ghastly future. So, I mean, that is the context. And like I said, we can't hold that in our minds all the time, but it is useful when it matters to remember that. So anyway, what's the answer? Electrify everything with clean energy. This is our future Boston, Haven Bridge, right? Electric bikes, electric cars, electric buses, electric buildings. And, you know, there's like, how quickly can we do that? I don't know if you've seen this from Tony Sabo's presentations ever, but he was showing how quickly change can occur. Now, you looked at the Easter Day parade, and in 1900, it's all horse and buggies, and there's only one car. And 13 years later, it's all cars, and there's only one horse and buggy. And so the question is, can that happen again? And I went and got some data to sort of see how quickly it's happening. And well, first I'll say what's driving a lot of it is just the price of batteries has plummeted. And next year it's expected to hit $100 a kilowatt hour on average. And that's believed to be the price, which the selling price of an electric car becomes the same as an internal combustion car. And it's thought that that'll really cause the big change. Now, Teslas are already below that price. They're able to actually make electric cars cheaply, but other companies are higher, and you know the average is still right around that 100, and it's expected to go below that, and that's thought to be the big change. But anyway, if you look at it, you can see, I mean, Norway's done it in 13, so that's in 8 years. It's gone from 5% to 85% of the sales. And you can see Iceland, it's zooming up equally. Sweden, other European countries, Germany, France, and it's happening in China. The US, we're still in the very early stages. Something happened 2016 through 2020, and we just made no progress then. But we're starting to move now. So there's hope. It's happening. One other thing that's pushing it is countries and cities are starting to ban sales. They set dates for which they will no longer sell gas cars, and starting as early as 2025. In some states, Oregon, Washington, Norway, many others in 2030, and California, Canada, Massachusetts have all set 2035. Biden has given an executive order for 2035 for the US. And, you know, the problem is that's open to elections, right? A new president can change that. Congress can change that at any time. But anyway, these dates are forcing the issue. So it's going to happen. And it's, like I said, it's just a question of how quick. And so I guess my question, and let me unshare for a second, which I do have on the top, I guess. Yeah, so share. So my question, everybody, well, you know, what's, you know, US is lagging, and that's partly because incentives and just our politics. But I was just wondering, in terms of people, is there anything that's holding, or what has held you back, or are there things that are holding you back, or doubts? I just like to get a little discussion on that. What's holding people back from having an electric car? Any fears? Anything else? Has it just been opportunity, and you're gonna do it? You just waiting for the car to die?
I'd say that's exactly where I am, that we're planning on doing it. And we're redoing our kitchen right now, so that's kind of financially the top priority, but
Okay.
along with the heat pump and the electric cars. I mean, I think like your schedule as far as the heat pump, probably going to be next year.
Okay.
But I don't have any, I used to wonder what the battery replacement cost would be and how long they would last, and found out from Dave K this morning it's pretty expensive to change the batteries, but I haven't heard that you needed to very often.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my batteries have held up, and certainly the newer ones don't have the problem anymore. I mean, the Dave's problem was a problem with Priuses. If you left them for several months, their batteries would die. But they figured out how to maintain batteries now, and batteries will actually take care of themselves. So the battery failure has not been an issue, and they're warranted for, I think the Tesla warrants theirs for 1 million miles. So
Wow.
that it was a problem, but that's a past problem.
Has the battery fires problem gone away?
Not well. GM has had a problem with with the Bolt, and they've recalled them all, and they're giving them new batteries. But the reality is they make the news all the time. But according to NHTSA, the actual rate of battery fires in electric cars is 100 times less than they are in gas cars. And someone's pointed out, internal combustion engines, it's in their name.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it turns out that, yes, lithium is very flammable, but gasoline is also very flammable, and it's more likely to get a gas leak than to have a lithium problem by a factor of 100. But people's perceptions are different because one makes the news, right? And the hundreds of gas fires that occur every day you never hear about, but the once a month electric fire makes the news everywhere.
John Kendrick?
Yeah, just a quick question, and I'm sure this is easily answered, but I am not 100% certain about the convenience of an electric car, all electric, if you are taking a long trip, down to Washington. It takes us 8 or 9 hours usually to drive down there, and so recharging. It's probably an easy question, Paul, but
no, but that is I think most people's scariest thing, right? They're imagining a long trip, and the gas car, you just don't think about it. You have confidence you'll find a gas station, and you don't even worry about it. And there's that total uncertainty. Is this doable or not? Do I have to research it, right? And it feels scary. Yes, I agree. That is the number one thing. So I'll address that. The quick answer is I've gone to Washington, D.C., and it was painless. Okay. But yeah, the range issues, I guess, right? I think that's the number one. Are there other things that people are uncertain of? I know Steve has an electric car.
Yeah, I'll speak to John's question too, because we have the second generation of a Leaf with officially 150 miles of range. And we can't take that on long trips. There's no recharging infrastructure around the highways or the country yet for that. They were all specific for Teslas and have not yet converted, although I guess Tesla will share, and that's coming, and that's in the wind. But we have to plan our trips very carefully, and we deliberately bought it to be mostly an around the town car because it's perfect for that. But we kept our Prius for the long trips because there's the gasoline infrastructure still in place. And the US government's making noise. They wanted to electrify the highway charging stations, and that's well and good, but it hasn't come yet. So the range issues, I think, are still real.
That's true. And so having a Leaf and a Tesla, I thought that is the difference. I never took the Leaf on a long trip. I tried to think of how I could take it to New York, and I just never did. And whereas the Tesla, I take to New York all the time. And there is a cutoff too. I mean, 150, so you're really maybe going most 120 before you want to recharge, and that's just like 2 hours, right? Whereas if your range is in the 300s, then you're going, 5 hours, right? Which is more typical for You go 5 hours, you take a half-hour break, you go another 5 hours. So that matches up. So there's that, the car you get, that's the kind of decision. Are you getting a commuting car? And then, 100 miles is really okay. Or if you want a car that's going to go a longer distance, then you want one that's like 200, 300-mile range. Yeah, Rick?
Well, I just wanted to say, so we've been shopping for an all-electric car too. And I know also from our experience with our Volt, there are multiple charging stations. So driving up in the main turnpike, there are multiple charging stations that will take the Volt and other cars, not just the Tesla. There's a rack of Tesla charging stations, which we can't use, but there's one or two other racks of other kinds of charging stations, which we can use. Also, when you start talking to car dealers about buying an EV, some of the manufacturers, for example, Volkswagen, has its own network of charging stations across the country. And often what happens is when you get in, I think this is true for Kia or Hyundai as well, they'll have a map that comes with your guidance system that tells you where the charging stations are. So, I mean, and I know Tesla does that too. So, I mean, it's not just Tesla or nothing.
Yeah. No, that is true. You should be seeing, right, the screen share.
Yep.
So this is actually from a few years ago. I just took a screenshot off my phone. There's phone apps that show you the charging station. So you can see finding a charging station is not as scary as people think. They're everywhere. And the orange ones are the level 3. So I'll say, so level 1 is just your house plug. That gives you five miles or so for every hour it's plugged in. So again, if you're just commuting, a house plug is fine. You can just charge overnight. You get your, 40 miles a day charging overnight. The greens are the level 2. So those are the usual charges people think of. You can get that in your house if you want. And then the level 3, anyway, the level 2s give you 20 to 40 miles for an hour charge. And the level 3s, which are mostly Tesla, but they're not all Teslas. The Electrify America and other companies are starting to add more and more. And so you could, right, you don't need a Tesla. There's enough of these oranges, and they can give you, they're like 200 to 600 miles in an hour charge. And so it's typically about half hour to get yourself charged up.
Are these stations standalone, or are they coupled with a gas station?
They're everything. So they're at train stations, they're at town halls, they're in parking lots, they're in malls, they're near supermarkets. So just like locally. So Acton has level 2 at the train station. It has one at town hall, has one, I think it's the fire station. They're going to be adding several more. There was one in Maynard, right at the right across from the movie theater. Stop and Shop has them. The Chili's in Littleton has one. The Concord train station. So those are the ones like in the immediate environment to give you a sense. And they're not as visible. So that's why you want an app, you want a map that shows you where they are, but they're there. And you go into Boston, a lot of parking, like Alewife has a bunch, the airport has a bunch, but other parking lots have them. Prudential parking has it. So there are places like that.
Are there enough parking charging spots for
yeah,
the demand?
Well, this is again the advantage of a Tesla, because the Tesla ones they go from like 10 spots to 100. So there's not a problem there. But the others, it could be 1, could be 2, could be up to 5 or so. So a lot, the apps will tell you if they're used or not. And so that it's a lot of, and it's also another big problem actually in reality is a lot of them are not always working either. So an app will help you there. So the reality is, yeah, they could be filled, they could be broken, they could have a gas bar blocking it. So, I mean, those are actual real problems. Sharon?
Yeah, the other thing is that whenever you go on a long trip, and we haven't experienced it, and that's why we started with a hybrid to get the backup because of this anxiety range issue. You really have to plan out your trip and map where potential charging stations are so that you would go there. The infrastructure is being gradually built, but certainly, especially on a long trip.
Yeah.
And depending on where you go, we have a friend who's definitely wants to buy an all electric, but she has this annual vacation that's way up in Maine, and there's just no charging stations going up there. So
let me add two other things too. Multiple times when we've gone on vacation, we found that the place that we stay now has charging available. So, for example, the AMC Lodge in the White Mountains, Highland Lodge, has charging stations. So you can charge there. The B&B that we like to stay at on the coast of Maine, little old B&B, it has a charging station.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're around, and many destination spots want it possible to charge.
Yeah.
What does the charge cost, or does it cost?
There, a lot are free. They do, I mean, I don't know, for me to get a full charge, it's maybe, so a full charge for the Tesla is 300 something miles. That costs about $9. But often it's free. You go to, yeah. So in fact, like the Acton train station, you get a free charge. You also don't pay for parking, and you also have of course now there's lots of spaces. But back when you had to be there at 7 a.m. to get a space, you could show up at 9, and there'd be a space, and the space there was no charge for parking, and you got free electricity. So. Whole Foods, Stop and Shop, places like that give you free charging. The Chili's I mentioned had a free charging. So where I worked at Wellesley College, it was free charging. So you can pretty much do it. So there is no cost, but at most you're going to be paying half of what it would charge for gasoline, and that was back when gasoline was cheap. So probably quarter now.
And just another point, Paul, because again, I'm looking at charging stations other than Teslas. There's at least 10 general EV charging stations at Alewife. Another probably half dozen, maybe more, maybe 10 at Framingham at the bus shuttle. And then
also at the mall. At the top roof of the mall, there's several.
So yeah, there's usually one open, and on the top floor of Terminal B at Logan Airport, there's a large number. I couldn't tell you, but there's a large number, and often I don't have trouble finding a place to park.
Yeah.
So.
By the way, even if you do think it's not quite what it is, it's happening fast, and it will not be a problem. So now I say it's potentially a problem, but it soon won't be a problem. That seems to be the big focus, both nationally at the state, and even Boston as a city. Boston's going to be putting on street charging. Condos are going to be, there's bills in the State House that will not allow condos to block and apartments to block charging. So they'll be there. All new parking construction will be required to have charging. So it's not something to be scared of. But again, it's a question you have to decide: are you getting a commuting car, or do you want a car that'll go longer distances? And so actually, I got one of each, right? But with the Tesla, I've gone to Maine several times. No problem. I've been, like I said, to Washington, DC. I've been to New York City several times. I've gone to Lake Ontario several times, and I would actually say it's better than when I drive. You're not sitting at a pump waiting, doing something for 10 minutes. I just park, plug it in, I go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, and I come out and the car is charged. So it's actually in some ways a better experience than putting in gas. And I personally need a break after 4 hours, and so it kind of works out perfectly. So it's a decision in which car you buy, but the range needn't be an issue at all. And if you're commuting, or the other approach is you have one car for commuting and one car for long distances. Yeah. Are there other things that that's holding people back, or any other fears? Okay, so like I can personalize this a little bit. So whoops. Yeah, so I guess I can't control this. There we are. So I got
Paul,
yeah.
Paul, you didn't mention the fear of not seeing your mechanic on a regular basis.
I'll get to that one soon. So this is I started with a Prius like everyone else here, it seems. But 2013, when the Leaf first came out, apparently I'm an early adopter, so it's 9 years ago. I got, and I did a search of 2013 Nissan Leafs for this photo, and mine showed up. So this is mine at Christmas Motors. So I just gave it to them. So I bought the car for $17,000 after all the discounts and stuff, and it's selling for 11. So that's, if you figure 9 years and lost 6,000, it's like $60 a month is the cost of ownership, right? Of just the car. So, and I do have a Tesla that I got 2017, and I looked at the used prices of those, and they're almost exactly what I paid for it. So there's that issue. They don't lose value, right? When I first got the Leaf, I charged it at Wellesley College. I charged it at home, just a regular plug. That all worked. There were places in between, like Stop and Shop, that had like a dozen chargers there. And I go, and you meet other people that have electric cars. You start chatting. That's kind of part of the fun. And everyone is like, no one ever had regrets. Everyone, you talk to people and they say, this is the smartest thing I ever did. And they just pat themselves on the back. I mean, no one ever wants to go back. It's just quieter. It's just such a nicer experience. They just drive better. They drive intuitively. You get in it. You don't have those lags that you have in other cars where there's like a second before something happens. Everything happens immediately, and it just feels smoother. It's a more pleasant experience. Anyway, Rochelle wanted she wanted an SUV, she wanted 4-wheel drive, she wanted, I don't know, other things. So and she wanted the longer range. So we traded in and got a second Tesla. So that's why I have the car. And the other thing is electric bikes. I want to talk about those. And that has also been just a great experience. I mean, again, it's about fun is part of it. I just hop on it and I replace it for all my short drives now. So anything, depending on the season, not in the winter, but if it's under 6 to 8 miles, I'll take the bike. I don't take the car. So going to church, I take my bike. So replaces things. And it's just makes us older folk feel like you're a little kid again, where you used to just hop on your bike and you never thought about it. So you do that. You don't worry about hills. You don't worry about, am I going to have enough energy to get back? You don't think about that because that all vanishes. You just get on it and you ride. And the main effect is it takes away the hills. And the other effect is you just feel safer because you can get that extra pulse of power whenever you need it. If you know how it is when you're trying to cross the street after stopping at a red light, it takes a little while to get going on a bicycle, and you're feeling out of control for a few seconds because you're not really at speed. Whereas this, you can just zoom right across the street, and you feel you have the maneuverability to be safer. So I strongly recommend that. I guess the one thing with EVs is you try them, and most people, they try it they just want to get one. And there was an Earth Day event, and I was showing off my Tesla at Walden Pond, and they had some electric bikes there, and I got on one, and you just get on one and you're immediately convinced. So I'll say that. I guess one point I want to point out is to meet our target goals, because we need a 50% increase each year in the EVs, and actually we've been doing it. We're getting about 80%, so that's happening. That's why EVs are better. I'm sorry, I don't seem to be able to control myself here.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
The electric bike is intriguing, so I was wondering, like,
Oh, sure.
what's the cost and like what's the range?
The cost, yeah, okay. So the costs they begin about 500. 1,000 will get you a good one. I spent a couple thousand. I wanted extra range on mine. The range on mine is between 60 and 100 miles. Depends on how much I want to use. You get to adjust the assist. So basically, you're pedaling like a regular bike, but you can just like add power to your pedaling. So
Yeah, or you could
it's sort of like an
arrange to-
exercise bike, right? Where you kind of set your level of effort.
Yeah, for me, it would be like getting to the destination without being all sweaty would be the advantage.
Yes. Yeah, well, that is it. That is one thing. You can use it for commute because you can get someplace without sweating. Right. And if I'm in a hurry, I use it a lot. There's you turn it on for hills. But I do find my idea of what a hill is changes as I drive. So in the beginning, it's the big hills. And after a while, it's like, I start imagining hills, I think.
Hey,
But,
Paul.
yeah.
Speaking of hills, one thing I discovered which surprised me was that they don't use regenerative braking on the bicycles, which is kind of the thing that makes the Prius work.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to...
the very expensive ones do.
Okay.
But they generally find what you gain is not worth the cost. So,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, so you're right. You don't get the regenerative braking.
I also wanted to...
It also saves on brakes with a car, right? That's the one thing. With the Prius, you probably notice your brake jobs are much less frequent, if at all.
Actually, we have the opposite experience. I'm not quite sure why, but we're only getting about half the life we normally would with brakes. I don't know whether it's because of an ABS problem, but the mechanics will tell you it's because, they put lightweight brakes on it. And it's like, well, they should. But the other thing I wanted to mention in terms of why EVs are better is somebody was telling us the other day, and you can confirm this, that there's apparently a dog mode. So if you have a dog, you can basically set the temperature level and it will keep the dog, which I thought would be consuming too much battery power, but apparently not.
No.
And it sends you a message if your dog is too warm or needs to be petted or whatever.
Well, they use heat pumps now. So they're very efficient in the heating and cooling. And you can, and it also shows on the screen, don't worry about my dog, because you don't want people breaking your window to save your dog, right? And it shows what the temperature is. And so there's all kinds of, once you're electric, there's all these other things they add. And you have the Sentry cameras and things like that. So someone keys your car, you have it on film. Things like that. There's ton you can watch. Again, with the Tesla, if you're charging, you can just sit and watch a Netflix film, right? It has karaoke you can sing as you're driving. Rick, there's a hand up there, or Sharon?
Yes. I'm back on bikes. The interesting thing on the bike, the electric bikes are really heavy.
Yes.
So it's picking them up and moving them can be problematic.
Yeah, if you live on a third floor apartment, right, that's an issue. It could also, on your bike rack, you need a good bike rack on your car. So that is a consideration. Yeah, they are heavy. I mean, it makes up for it, riding the bike, it's not a problem because you have the assist. But yeah, that is a fact. They are heavy. Because the batteries are heavy. So I think this is why they're better. I mean, I think we're all convinced. And then you mentioned maintenance. And with my, so the maintenance I've done on my EVs are, wiper fluid basically,
Mhm.
right? And the other things, tires, brakes. And I just listed things, I didn't look this up. I just listed things that I've known I've had to fix on my gas cars over the years. And it's all kinds of things. You start realizing there's all these things that exist in gas cars that either need maintenance or may break at some point in time, and they just don't exist in EVs. And so even if an EV seems more expensive when you're buying it, they turn out to be cheaper. So a Model 3 Tesla works out the same as a Camry. If you look at the total, lifetime cost, and partly because the resales are higher too. So they're more affordable than people think. And you're just not dealing with, you don't have the, this like range anxiety, but you don't have the fear that you're going to break a belt or something else weird. Your fuel pump is going to go, while you're driving, things that happen to people. So there's that piece too to mention. Yeah, I guess we could move on to other things, or like we can talk more about cars or bikes. Any more bike or car questions?
I have a question for you, Paul. Have you heard of an alternative method of in the wind of battery replacement where they're small modular batteries, so you don't have the big honking battery in the car, and therefore if there was a stock at like a gas station of pre-charged little modular batteries, you pull in, they pull out, let's say 20 of your little batteries, replace you with 20 charged ones for a fee, and on you go in 5 minutes.
Well, if you live in China, you can do that.
Yeah.
So NIO is a company that does that with their batteries, and they set up these replacement stations.
Yeah,
And
it sounds smarter to me than having all these big charging stations all over the place. You could use the gasoline infrastructure.
Well,
the
the
gas station.
negative on it is that there's different batteries, and then batteries evolve. And so what are they going to have on stock, right? Are they going to stock for every different kind of car? Are they going to, then different model years, right? So it's uncertain whether this model will work, but it is very popular in China, and NIO is starting to do that. They're just starting to sell in Europe. But there's nothing in the US there. There's scooter companies that do that on the smaller end. So that's my answer. I guess, I mean, the US has been lagging, right? I mean, China's the real leader, and there's lots of models of cheap electric cars. I mean, you can get an electric car for $2,000 in China. In fact, the best-selling one is for $2,000. And there's all types, and ranging up through the Tesla and other companies that make cars that are equivalent to Tesla that are cheaper, like BYD, and Xpeng, and there's lots. Europe is next, and the Chinese companies are starting to move into Europe, and that's again because the incentives are so much better. The US not having the incentives, the companies are just not pushing their electric cars. I mean, your choices in the US are basically Tesla, Nissan, Hyundai and Kia, and Volkswagen, and the Ford Mach-E and the GM. That's basically what you can get in the US. Europe, you have like 50 different companies. In China, it's like over 100. So that's the situation. So the answer, Steve, is maybe that'll happen in the US, but it's not happening yet.
Do you see incentives being improved in this country?
Well, that's what they're really pushing. There's a lot happening with the infrastructure bill, but that's what Senator Manchin killed, right? The big bill was to have really strong national incentives, and so the politics have gotten away. And this Massachusetts as a state is moving very aggressively there, and there's a bill right now in conference in the State House that will greatly increase different things. Like I mentioned, just more charging, and as part of it. Whoops, I gotta just stop touching things here. more charging, but they're also going to offer things like trade in a junker and they'll give you credit towards an electric car,
Yeah.
things like that. Income-based incentives and like, so right now there's still a 7,500 tax credit for, not for Teslas, not for GM, but for other companies. You get a tax credit, but they want to give it so you just get the money right up front when you buy it. And Massachusetts wants to add like another 7,000 to that. So that really adds up. So probably in a month, we'll know if we have really great incentives in Massachusetts. It looks pretty certain that it'll happen. So there's good incentives now. They'll get better. But Europe is, like I said, still been way ahead. And gas prices are much higher in Europe too. So there's that also. But there is, I mean, if you look at wait times for EVs in the US, they're a couple of months to a year now. So the demand is there, and it's ramping up. It's just we've been a little late to the game. Our ramp has been delayed, but it's happening, and it's just really a question of when. So this is an article in the New York Times. Let's kill all the leaf blowers. And it was complaining about the noise and the pollution, especially leaf blowers, which are not really a necessary thing, and how we just need to go electric. And whoops, get too far ahead there. I got to learn how to click. There we go. So once I got the bike and realized how much better that was, I went with the lawnmower. Someone else, was it Rick, has an electric lawnmower? I mean, again, it's just more fun. I mean, it's quieter. You just start it. I mean, you're not pulling things. You're not hoping it starts. You're not having to worry about, oh, I haven't got my, my spark plugs are fouled, or have I flooded the engine? Have I not primed it enough, or have I flooded it? Things like that. I guess particularly with the snowblower, but the lawnmower, just that ease of starting, that it's quiet, does the same good job. Battery runs out in about an hour, which is about when I run out. No, I actually have a second battery I could just plug in, but I usually just take the break after an hour. They fold up. If you look on the right, it just shows you how they take very little space. So then I, went with a chainsaw, and all the same advantages. It just starts. You're not smelling gas. You're not having to get gas. I haven't been to a gas station in several years now.
Wow.
I don't know what the price of gas is. I know it's high. I hear people complain. I don't know.
There's also that are coming out pickup trucks with charging ports so that you could charge your tools like that. So like a big Ford F-150 pickup truck, and you could just plug your tool back into it, and there you go. So you could be at a remote site or recharge out in the field or something like that. So pretty cool. Yeah,
I think that'll be a big selling point for people, small businesses, right? Yeah. So there's the Ford, there's the Rivian. Next year, Tesla says they'll have their truck out. Chevy is coming out. It's the Silverado, their truck, right? And once your truck is electric, you can then use it to power things. And that's a good point too.
Paul, what's your experience with the electric snowblower?
So I was hesitant to do that, so I held off on that one, right? Because we know what our snows are like, and I look at them. I say, yeah, it's going to do most snows, but you get those really heavy ones, right? Where it's like getting near 2 foot, and then with a snow plow, you got 3-4 feet on the end of your driveway.
Right.
And so I held off. But if you just look at that looks like a real snowblower. And I looked at reviews, and finally, so this is not a year, so not this last winter, but the winter before, I finally decided, okay, this looks like it can do it. And I got it. And my first experience was not good. And I realized that there are some precautions you have to use. So you want the batteries to be at room temperature. So that's one thing. The other thing is if you if you have a charged battery and you let it sit around, the battery discharges itself halfway to protect itself. So I didn't know that. So my first experience was with batteries that were, halfway done, and they were kept out of the garage, which was cold. And so 2 cold batteries that were half charged was not able to do the job. So having learned that, when I see this snow, I bring the batteries inside, get them at room temperature, make sure they're fully charged, and they've been great. So we've had some big snows. So I think in the last 2 years has been 2 or 3, and it's been fine. It's handled the job. It's handled the job great. It has a big throw distance. It's self-powered. So it's and again has that big advantage in the starting, right? Because that was always my problem. I didn't know, did I not prime it enough, or did I
Right.
prime it too much? Have I flooded it, right? Too much,
Absolutely.
and how many times to get it started. So here I just press and I go, and that's just nice. And you don't mind just same with the mower. You don't mind just stopping it to get something out of the way because you can just restart it immediately.
Right.
So you're not like letting it run as you're trying to deal with other things. So I would say it's now ready that you can either go for a smaller one and just decide you're going to use something else for the bigger storms, or just go all in and get a one of the heavy duty models.
Do all these tools take the same size battery?
Yeah, they all use the same well, yes, they all use interchangeable batteries. The batteries come in different sizes. So the average size is 5 amp hour. So one 5 amp hour will run the lawnmower for an hour. Chainsaw for a very long time. There's 2.5, which is less. And so you could use if you want less weight on your chainsaw, you just don't want to carry around the weight, right? Or the hedge trimmer. So 2.5 will work for those. Now, 2.5 will fit in any of them. It just won't last as long, right? It's linear. So yeah, the 5 amp for the snowblower, you want 2 5 amp hour. Now they also come in 7.5 amp hour. They come in 10 amp hour. So you can really power it up more if you want. But they do start getting expensive once you get above the 5. Yeah, Rick?
Paul, for that to be true, so we haven't had that same experience. We have batteries for weed whackers, for a chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend an electric chainsaw, by the way, over gas. And now a lawnmower and stuff. And they're not all interchangeable, but they're not necessarily all by the same manufacturer. So is the issue they've got to be the same manufacturer to be interchangeable?
Yes. Yeah. So that's it. Basically, when you make your first purchase, you want to get into the ecosystem that you're going to be wedded to, right? Because that gives you the charger and it gives you battery. Otherwise, you're gonna have to buy a separate charger and a separate battery. So, yeah. So the big companies are Ego, Steel, ST, IHL, Black and Decker is getting into it. So I'd say any of those 3, you're probably okay. But once you kind of commit to one, you kind of stay committed to that. And so they actually give you the first charger and battery pretty much very cheaply when you buy a tool, because they kind of want to get you hooked onto their ecosystem, knowing that you'll buy future tools of the same company. But again, it's just such a, right? I mean, I don't know your experiences. I just find it's just a much more pleasant experience using an electric chainsaw than the gas one, using electric mower, using the electric snowblower. And the snowblower is the one I'm most hesitant about, and I think they're there now. Yeah, we can talk. We started talking about induction stoves. We can talk a little bit more about those. So I got one from the Acton Library, so you can just try them out for free if you haven't tried one. The Stowe Library said they're going to get one. I don't know if they have yet.
No, they have one. Sustainable Stowe gave them one. They have
Okay.
one out.
Okay. Yeah, so that's you can just try it out and just see. And my experience is, as Dave said, you just, it boils very quickly, and it's sort of like the electric driving where things are instant. So boil, not boil, boil, not boil. You just, you can just immediately get it to go to the new temperature. You're not, because the plate itself is not heating up. So you're not waiting for the plate to cool and warm up. It's sending all the power directly to your utensil. And so you get an instant response. So things happen quickly, but they also happen with more control. You can get exactly the temperature you want, and you change the temperature, you're immediately at that new temperature. But the nicer thing is the cleaning. You get spills and stuff like that, your plate isn't hot. And so things don't get baked on. You can just, clean it with a paper towel. It may get a little warm from the pan on top of it, but it itself is not hot. And so you're not, well, if you have little kids, you're not worried they're going to burn themselves. You're not going to accidentally burn yourself. You're not going to get stuff burnt on it. So it cooks better. You get that instant response, and there's the cleaning. I think those are the main advantage. The main disadvantage is you need things that are magnetic, and if you have a favorite pan that's copper, clad, that won't work. So that's the issue. I'm going to get myself, a plate like this. I mean, I'm convinced. And my stove doesn't have a pilot, so I'm not burning gas all the time. So, but when it goes, I'll definitely go induction. I actually thought of it when I did get our stove, and it was like another $1,000 more, and I said, maybe, but I thought I'd still do it. But then I had to add a 240 line, and that was gonna be another $1,000, and I should have done it, but I didn't. I regret. So whereas with electric car, there's been like no, and everything else has been no regrets. My one real regret is I didn't do an induction stove when I had the chance. So if any more thoughts on those, I don't know. I guess some other issues. I mean, I found Martin Luther King riding a bike. I thought just to remind us that there is a moral issue here, right? And I guess it came across this other article. So there was this is in Scotland. So there's a group called the Tire Extinguishers, and they go around there knocking out things. So I don't know, we can discuss anything more. I actually didn't talk about heat pumps, and people have had more experience with them than I do actually. So we can chat more about that. I certainly got the theory all down.
I had one general question, not about
Yeah.
heat pumps, but where are we going to get all this electricity?
Well, that is an issue, right? And that's part two, right? Electrify everything and then have a green grid. And we're going to need a lot more electricity. We're going to need 2 to 3 times what we have. So I mentioned the State House has a bill. The current bill is half of it is a wind bill. So Massachusetts is committing to having a lot of offshore wind. So that's one answer. The phrase they bandy around is that we're the Saudi Arabia of offshore wind, that we're very blessed in that we have a very long coastline, and our coastline is very windy, especially in winter when we have less solar. So there's a balance there. So that's the hope. We were hoping to get a lot of hydro from Canada, but Maine's making that difficult. I wonder whether we can get it through New York. I'm not sure, because New York is amenable, so that's a possibility. But it is something we're going to need. I mean, that has to be part of people's thinking too. When you're making voting decisions, you need to vote people that are aware that the grid's going to be an issue, and that that has to be part of the solution for these things. But that goes to my first slide, about the urgency, right? If we truly believe that urgency, then we have to be all in on all these things, and having a grid that can handle it, having sources of electricity, not shutting down Seabrook, keeping Yankee Row going. Is that the one in Connecticut? Yeah. And things like that. Being open to if someone wants to build a small modular nuclear reactor, to not fight that sort of thing.
Yeah, great. Well, it's been great, Paul. We're up almost to 9:20, so we probably
Oh, okay. Yeah.
wrap
Okay.
this up.
Yeah.
But, thanks very much. And
Okay. Yeah. See you at the plant sale.
yeah, sounds good. Okay. Bye, everyone.